Everybody, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm Patty Aaron. I'm with the Sonoma Resource Conservation District, and we are going to have an informational webinar tonight about the North Bay Forest Improvement Plan. Genevieve Tarino, my colleague, is going to be talking to you about all that, and we'll have time for questions and answers. Um, if you could put questions into the chat, that would be great. They'll come to Genevieve and me, and we'll cover those either as we go along or at the end, whichever she prefers. And um, I think that's it. Jen, would you like to get started?
Sure. Thank you, Patty. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for making some time on your Tuesday evening to go over the North Bay Forest Improvement Program with us. Um, the kind of agenda for today is to go through an overview of the program with a presentation. Then I figure we can click around a little bit on our website to get you oriented to what everything looks like. And then we'll do a Q&A. So like Patty said, feel free to put any questions or concerns you have in the chat box. And I think we'll probably wait until the end of my presentation and then we'll start addressing those questions. Um, Before I do that, I am going to share my screen. I hope it works. Let's see. Patty, are you able to see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay. And also, just as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, and we intend to not only send out that recording, but also share these presentation slides with you. There are some links on here that will be helpful as you're working on your application. And it's also just good to have on hand. There's a lot of stuff that's included in here. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Genevieve Tarino. I am a forestry project manager here at the Sonoma RCD. And in my role, I work on a variety of different forestry related projects, one of them being the NBFIP. And I'm kind of one of your designees as you go through applying through this program and if awarded, actually leading you to implementation. So starting off, let me close this. If you're unfamiliar with the Sonoma Resource Conservation District, we are a special district of the state that helps to serve individuals and community groups drive solutions to our pressing natural resources needs. So, at the SRCD, we cover everything from forestry and fuels to water resources and agricultural resources, a whole swath of different things. Um, but two important notes about the RCD is one, we are non-regulatory, and two, we provide free technical assistance to all landowners in the county. So, regardless if you decide to apply to the North Bay Forest Improvement Program or not, you are still welcome to reach out to us with any questions. Oh, next slide. There we go. All right. What is the North Bay Forest Improvement Program, or NBFIP for short? So NBFIP is an innovative incentives programs that provides public funds to support private investment in forest health and resilience projects. We actually received our funding from CAL FIRE, a CAL FIRE TA grant, or technical assistance grant, to put through this program to help landowners specifically in the North Bay. And that covers Sonoma County, Napa County, Lake County, and Mendocino counties. This program is designed really for private, non-industrial forest land owners in those four counties. So just as a reminder, we say non-industrial, that does not mean non-commercial. So if you are somebody who harvests timber on your land, that does not make you automatically ineligible for this program. And like I said, this is funded through CAL FIRE's Wildfire Resiliency Program, and we have dedicated funding till about the end of 2027, and there's hopes that we will secure more in the future to keep this program running. So to go over some of the program goals and intent. So some of the goals are to reduce vegetative fuel loads and risks of wildfire, to reduce insect infestation, and to reduce disease epidemics. We recognize that in addition to the recent wildfires that have plagued Sonoma County and the region, this kind of brings about either concurrently or before and after effect of lots of different insect and disease epidemics that can come as a result. In addition to that, there has been a lot of funding and planning on the state and federal level to reduce vegetative fuel loads, recognizing that it's not a matter of if another wildfire comes through, it's a matter of when. And to wrap that up, the program intent really is to just increase the pace, scale, and effectiveness of forest treatments in the North Bay. We recognize too culturally that there have been a lot of changes in the last few years in terms of how people view stewardship of their forest. And for, this program kind of not only empowers landowners to implement treatments, but also to educate themselves a bit more about what those treatments could look like and what long-term stewardship also looks like. So for MBFIP, there are two types of projects that you can apply for. The first type of project is planning. So under the planning umbrella, this is the development of a forest management plan. And if you're unfamiliar, a forest management plan is a long-term planning document that helps forest landowners outline their objectives, goals, get a sense of the, abiotic environmental conditions such as water. We talk about wildlife, and it all culminates in a section of management recommendations. And this is a guiding document for you, for your family, for whoever you've endowed that land to in the future, to have an understanding of what's been done in the past, what management techniques you'd like to use in the future, and just get a general sense of objectives. So, what's important about a forest management plan is not only does it provide all those purposes as I listed out, but they can also make you eligible for certain other incentive programs. So, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program through the Natural Resource Conservation Service requires you to have an FMP in place, as does the California Forest Improvement Program as well. So, as you can see, it's a prerequisite for other funding sources, but it's also just a good document to have on hand. Now, the second type of project is what we call implementation. And this is actually putting treatments on the ground. So you can apply for forest treatments for everything from like small stem thinning to mastication, pruning, pile burning, and we'll go over the specifics of the kinds of activities we cover. But like I said, the main difference, one is planning and one is implementation. Um, for implementation, as I said, this is a cost share program. So we do reimburse you for part of the cost of treatment. I just want to reiterate that that's a point of confusion for a lot of people. This is not a grant program in the sense that, all the funding is going to you. This is a cost share. So you will dedicate part of your own funds to this and then we'll reimburse you for part of it. So going back to the planning side of things, this slide here shows you the cost breakdown of developing a forest management plan through the North Bay Forest Improvement Program. So as you can see, I'm hoping you can see my mouse. The base for a management plan is about $6,000. And then as you increase in acreage, there is a gradual increase in price as well. Please note that for a forest management plan development and the application to North Bay Forest Improvement Program, you are required to work with a registered professional forester. You may not submit an application for an FMP yourself. Please have your registered professional forester do it on your behalf. If you do not have a relationship with one or you're looking to change your RPF, there's a list of resources on our website displaying the contact information of regional foresters who want to participate in the program and who are available to you for help. So that kind of goes over the forest management plan. It's worth mentioning that if you have 40 acres or less of land and you want a forest management plan, you're only eligible for what we call a mini management plan. And as you can see, that incurs a smaller cost there. But it has all the same benefits of a regular size management plan in that, it fulfills the prerequisite to apply to other incentives programs. It includes all of the essential components of a regular plan, including those management recommendations and tons of maps. All right, so let's go on to eligibility. So, as I've said before, this program is designed for private, non-industrial, small forest landowners. So we define small as between 5 and 5,000 acres in ownership, which to me, not small, but on the grand scheme of things, surely is. Um, the second major point is applicants who have not already received funding through Proposition 68. So that includes if you've received funding through the California Forest Improvement Program since 2018. And the third major eligibility criteria is for applicants who can afford the treatment after the incentive payment. It's important to note that sometimes these projects can incur a large upfront cost. Um, and some folks, really rely on that reimbursement or can't quite make ends meet before that reimbursement is received. So please be cognizant of that as you apply. Do not apply for any treatments that you can't afford upfront because the reimbursement will take a few months, if not to a month and a half after you finish the project. So that covers applicant eligibility, but for project eligibility. Um, and this specifically is addressing implementation because pretty much anyone can apply for a forest management plan. This does not apply necessarily. Oh, my bad. So for a project, an implementation project must be at least 1 acre in size. It can be just 1 acre, though we encourage you to treat more if you can afford it. Some of the covered activities include reforestation, forest stand improvement, and follow-up fuel hazard reduction activities. Like I said, we'll go through in more detail about what those look like. And yeah, if you want to have a forest management plan prepared, like I said, I'm going to reiterate again that it has to be done by a registered professional forester. And what makes a good fit for an implementation project? Well, that is an applicant who's committed to the sustainable management of their forest land. We really are looking for dedicated stewards, people who will continue to treat after the program is done. Another point would be an applicant who would not be able to implement treatments without financial support of the incentives program. We really are looking, one of the main focus points of this program is to serve, you know, underserved and disadvantaged communities throughout the region. So we want to ensure that this money is spread equitably across many different land ownership sizes and economic conditions. Um, Another point too, we are looking for people who have a forest management plan in place to apply for implementation. It is not explicitly required. It is not. It just makes you a little bit more competitive in the ranking criteria. So whereas in previous rounds, a forest management plan would give you about 10 points towards your application, we have since reduced that to about 5 points. So if you don't have one, like I said, it's not a prerequisite. It's not going to disqualify you, but it does give you a significant boost up. And, the last point here is if your property falls within a disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged community. And this is a designation that you can actually find online and search your address. There is a link in this presentation that can take you directly there. So if you're unsure whether or not your property is located in a DAC or SDAC area, you can quickly search that. All right, now let's get on to implementation activities. And just to reiterate, there was the planning component, and that is solely the forest management plan development. And then there is the implementation, and this is the on-the-ground treatments. So to start off, we offer something called professional services. And this is really would be provided by a third-party consulting forester, and they could help you do things like implementation and contract administration, flagging and compliance work, or if you needed help putting out bids, they could help you do that as well. So this, unlike the rest of the implementation activities, this is a flat rate. So there's PS1 and PS2. You are only eligible to apply for PS2 if you are located in a disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged community. But everyone else is eligible to apply for PS1. Now, this is not required, though, we always say we recommend you work with a registered professional forester. Having a relationship with somebody in the community is always a good idea, especially for long-term stewardship. The RCD and regional partners can do a lot to help you, but there's certain limitations we have in terms of capacity, funding, ability. So it's always good to have that professional in your corner and guiding you as well. So there are 3 rates available for implementation activities. There is the 40% reduced rate, which is for those who can afford the cost of treatments at a lower reimbursement rate. A lot of folks who apply to the 40% reimbursement rate recognize that they can afford some of these upfront costs better than others. And it also gives you a little bit of a leg up when it comes to ranking, and when we're reviewing your application. So if you know you can afford it and you want a few extra points while we're reviewing your application, the 40% rate is probably the move. The second rate offered is the 60% regular rate. And it's for anybody. Anybody who wants to use this. This is the most commonly applied for. And you're not awarded points for applying for this rate, but you're not penalized either. And the last and final rate is the 80% rate. And this is solely for people who own property in the disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged communities. So, as I've said, if you're unsure, please search that online and you'll find the link in this presentation that we'll send out. But if you're not located in that area, you're just not eligible for 80% rate. But this all ties back to our initial program goals and intent, which is to have a program that's equitable and serves lots of different communities. So we will dig into some of the actual on-the-ground treatments. The first category we have is called timber stand improvement. And listed underneath this category are 7 different practices that you can apply for. And as you can kind of see, and you'll see this in subsequent slides too, but you see the 40%, 60%, and 80% rate. And these categories here to show you what the expected reimbursement would be per acre of treatment. So TSI 1, these TSI 1 and 2 are very commonly applied for. This is for the pre-commercial thinning of small stem and what we call large stem or large diameter trees. Um, they're not actually large because we go range from 0 to 4 inches for TSI 1 and 4 to 8 inches in diameter for TSI 2. So these practices aren't intended to do major, forest clearing or reducing the number of snags per acre or take out your giant eucalyptus. It can't unfortunately fund that. But this is really to reduce density in the stand, to increase growing space for residual trees, and to reduce the incidence of disease and pests. We all know that kind of spreading out, it's that COVID idea of, 50 feet away, whatever it was. Um, Having in a little extra space is good for forest health. TSI 3 is what we call historic oak woodland enhancement and restoration. And this practice is really focused on removing encroaching Douglas firs from oak woodlands. Oak woodlands are an incredibly valuable resource in our state, both for habitat, human cultural resources, everything else. So we want to ensure that in the absence of fire, Douglas fir doesn't completely dominate all of these former oak woodlands. So, in addition to removing those Douglas firs, which can be up to 16 inches in diameter, that's where you can do a little bit of a larger tree removal, but only for Douglas firs encroaching on oak woodlands. The next few practices, TSI 4 and 5, this is called frilling. And really what this is just hacking into the cambium of the tree and squirting in some sort of herbicide and causing it to die. So you wouldn't be removing the tree outright. You would cause kind of a slower death of that tree, but it provides habitat for nesting birds. It adds to the structural complexity of the stand as well. So it's a different approach to just the outright removal that's seen in TSI 1 and 2. TSI 6 is used for the mastication of brush and small trees. That one I think is pretty explanatory. You have a stand that's dominated by something like, Himalayan blackberry or, shrubby natives that you just aren't too fond of. Take a masticator out there and get rid of those, kind of turn it all up. And the last practice is light understory removal and ladder fill reduction. So that really focuses on creating space and discontinuing the fuel between different levels, vertically and horizontally in the stand. And the whole purpose there, as I'm sure most of you know, is to really prevent the fire from going from the ground story into the canopy. The next category of treatments is called brush management. There's 2 practices here under the headline of brush management. There's 1 light hand treatment and 2 heavy hand treatment. And they're both kind of applying the same practices, but the idea is to remove any invasive or competing vegetation that may be impeding the growth of your forest land. So this is an example from a completed NBFIP project we did, where on the left-hand side, you can see a stand. There's a lot of ivy growing up on those tree boles there. There's a good amount of continuity between layers. And on the right-hand side here, you can see that they've removed all of that invasive grass, They have, removed the climbing ivies. They have done um, essentially what you would do in brush management. Some folks do use herbicide, which is something you can apply and use in this program. We do not, you do not have to, but you're allowed to. Next category is the follow-up slash treatments. And this practice is really intended to deal with and manage the slash that you generated in either timber stand improvement or brush management. So think about, say you applied to TSI 1 and you removed a bunch of small stems. Well, now you have a bunch of small stems and the fuel is still there. It's just in a different form. So we offer follow-up slash 1 through 5 to deal with it. Follow-up slash 1 and 2, we call this pile burn light or heavy. The distinguishing factor between light and heavy would really just be the amount of fuel you're dealing with, and sometimes considerations of, topography, if it's steep slopes, if it's not very accessible, that sort of thing. Follow-up slash number 3 is for chipping or masticating. You can do either or. Some people do prefer if you can get a chipper on site to do that. Some people use that chip to either in their gardens, on their trails, whatever else. Um, but you could also masticate it and grind it up and kind of get that nutrient cycling process going. The last two here included are piling light and piling heavy. Same idea as before in between the distinction of light and heavy, just amount of fuel and the topography. Um, so we offer piling and pilot burning. So what often happens is people will apply for the pilot and burn practice, but certain things come up. Either they built far more piles than they knew they would, weather conditions didn't cooperate, the burning window was too short, whatever else. So a lot of people will apply for pile and burn, but only end up actually piling. Now, you're not penalized for that if that does happen to occur. We would just reimburse you at that point for piling. And then the expectation would be, in the future, you would either find funding or reapply for funding to burn those piles. And you can see here, this is also an example from a completed project. The before is on the right hand here, all these slash piles built, and the after is these wonderfully burned piles, got rid of the fuel. Next up is site preparation, and this is the removal of vegetation competing or potentially competing with planted trees. So the purpose of this practice really is to reduce competition, um, and it can be used in conjunction with our next practice, which is called reforestation. And the idea would be you would prepare the site for planting. So that would require, hand grubbing, weed pulling, whatever is appropriate for that site necessarily. Sometimes herbicide application to remove recalcitrant or invasive species. You can use chainsaws, scalp the soil with hand tools, or like I said, chemical treatments. And the site preparation here, you can see the distinction between light, heavy, and moderate has to do with, I guess, the density of that competing vegetation, perhaps the number of trees you plan to plant or reforest with, and the topography and accessibility of that site. And right after there is the reforestation practice. And you can see we have reforestation practices 1 through 10, and they kind of list out, it's pretty self-explanatory here, how this is broken down. Reforestation 1 through 3 is planting, so it'd be on a per seedling basis. Whereas the previous practices, almost all of them are on a per acre basis. This is specifically on a per seedling. And you can rely on, your RPF or the RCD or other natural resource professionals to determine what density of planting is appropriate, what species of planting. There can even be assistance in terms of sourcing those trees too. We would like to see that they are sourced from CAL FIRE approved nurseries to ensure that it's the best stock available, highest chance of survival, and least likely to either introduce pests or pathogens or to be susceptible to them on the site. In addition to providing funds for actually purchasing these seedlings and planting them, we offer funds for tree shelters, tree cages, and if you're interested, you can also apply for 1 gallon pot seedlings or saplings. So when we talked about reforestation 1 through 3, we were talking about seedlings. So they're much, much smaller, much younger, usually, 1 or 2 year plugs that are coming from the nursery. Whereas a 1 gallon pot seedling or sapling would be a bit more mature of a tree, one that is a little more wind firm, a better root structure, a bit larger, probably a little less susceptible to browse. And, that's also a discussion you'd have with your forester or natural resource professional to determine what is best for that site. Um, and one last thing I'd like to bring attention to is the native seed hand planting. Now, this practice really was designed with oak woodlands in mind, recognizing that a lot of them have decreased in size across the state, not only due to Douglas fir encroachment, but we're also talking sudden oak death. And the idea really is to collect acorns from your site, hopefully deciduous acorns. That's what we want to focus on. And just directly sow them into the ground. You can either, stratify them in your refrigerator, and we have resources to detail all of that. But as I said again, if you're interested in improving and enhancing your oak woodlands, there are two very good practices underneath this program that can help you do that. And the final practice that we offer right now is called pruning. And self-explanatory, this is just pruning some of your trees. The idea is to once again reduce ladder fuels, break up that continuity in the fuel, and prevent crown fires. Not only that, it is oftentimes a healthy way to maintain your tree, reduce pests, mitigate infections, that sort of thing. And in our guidelines too, we provide a little bit of information about proper pruning techniques and whatnot. Um, but you can see there's 3 practices here. TPA stands for trees per acre, just in case you weren't familiar with that acronym. So pruning 1 is 50 to 100 trees per acre. Pruning 2 is 100 to 150, and pruning 3 is anything above 150. So, we talk about perhaps, oaks that have large sprawling structures and low-hanging branches. Perhaps that's a good, uh, a good species or a good idea to apply pruning to. Sometimes there's low-hanging branches from damage or whatever else. So this is another treatment that you can apply for. Before I move on to the actual nitty-gritty of application, I want to mention that the North Bay Forest Improvement Program is currently undergoing some revisions, and we are hoping to introduce about 3 new practices to the current cap rate sheet we have here. Those practices are still pending approval from CAL FIRE, so it is probably unlikely that they'll be available for this upcoming batch 8, that opens on January 16th. Um, but just in case they do, they will cover grazing for fuel reduction. Um, and there's 2 others that we hope to help manage some of the dead standing material on the ground. So we're talking about snags that have been left there from wildfire, insect disease, whatever else. Um, Unfortunately, I don't have much more information about that at the moment, but I think at this moment it would be safe just to rely on the original cap sheet on the website. And if any changes do happen before the application period opens on the 16th, we will be sure to notify you and provide you with that information. Okay, so how do you apply? The million-dollar question. You apply online. You also are, if you're applying for implementation, you can apply through the mail if you prefer. But for forest management plans, you do have to apply online because we request geospatial information from you and to submit that with your application. Fortunately, you can't mail that to us. Well, actually, if you had a USB, you could mail that to us. So I take that back. You can mail that to us too. Um, Batch 8 is open from January 16th until February 13th. We gave you about a month to get all your ducks in a row and submit everything. The Sonoma RCD and the Goldridge RCD were your partners in this, so any questions or problems that you have, feel free to give us a call, send us an email. We can walk you through. And as I've said, and I'll say it one more time, if you're applying for a forest management plan, your registered professional forester must submit that for you. Please do not submit it for them. Um, so let's see. So applications. Like I said, opens January 16th. So if you go to our website, you're not going to see anything there. It's just not posted. Forest management plans. So we actually accept forest management plans applications on a rolling basis. You can submit those whenever you want, but please note that we only review those applications once every several months. I think it's about a 3 month kind of cycle that we've been reviewing them. Um, so that application is always posted on our website. And while I'm thinking of it, I think I'll just show you the website. Um, Patty, can you see that? Can everyone see that?
Yes, Jen, we can see it. And we can see your cursor too, by the way.
Perfect. Thank you. Um, so yeah, let's take a little look around the website here. For you, those of you who don't know, it's very simple. It's just northbayforestimprovement.com. Brings you to this lovely web page. And we have just done some major changes to our website. So I hope you like them, and there's some more to come. But we, took back some of your feedback, and hopefully it's easier to navigate. So if you go to this tab here, apply now, it'll bring you to the application pages. So this would be your application for forest management plans. And, I'm eating my words now. I said it would always be available, but I forgot that currently there's some changes going on the back end, but that should be reposted very shortly. And implementation, I did say it would not be up, but it will be there on January 16th. Um, this is a great, oh no, this was what I did last year. So never mind. This is an informational webinar that I did last round. So if you ever need to refer to it, you can look back there, but you'll also have access to this recording and my updated slides. Um, there's some, fact sheets here too. So we're hoping that not only in this process and attending this webinar, you're educating yourself about the program, but the intent and hope too is that you talk to your neighbors, see if anyone else is interested in participating, maybe educating them a little bit about the program and opportunities that are available to them as forest landowners. So there's all these great materials here that you can point folks into, and even if you forget and you need a refresher, it's all here. Um, Now, I want to, before I go back to the presentation, just show you some of the resources here. So we have the support video, the cap rates document, and that's what I was showing you earlier on the slides, just kind of taken apart. Um, go. So this actually is the comprehensive cap rates document, and it shows you all of the practices that we offer, and it gives you a little description for each of them, what the scenario would look like, what the before and after situations are. So you can take a little bit of a deeper dive to see, is this the most appropriate treatment for this unit on my land or whatever else. Um, so you feel free to peruse that at your leisure. And if we happen to update our practices before batch 8 is released, we will upload a new version of this cap rate sheet. But like I said, we will notify you one way or another. So there's the cap rate sheet. We have probably one of the second most important thing, our list of registered professional foresters. So this is what I was referring to earlier, especially when I was talking about your forest management plan application. We have this very long list of registered professional foresters in good standing who want to participate in the program and who are available to help you. So you have their email, their phone number. Feel free to reach out. Lots of lovely folks on this list, and you don't only have to be preparing a forest management plan. As I've said before, if you're doing implementation, we highly encourage you to work with an RPF as well, though it is not required. And this is just a good resource in general. If you were looking for somebody, didn't really know any RPFs, didn't even know where to start or find contacts, here's a good old cheat sheet for you. It's a bunch here. All right, so going back to the presentation. All right, I've belabored the application aspect to you. So I think we'll move on to project ranking for implementation. Now, let me actually go back a little bit and say that for forest management plans, we have funded, I want to say nearly all, if not all, forest management applications that have been submitted to us since the beginning of North Bay Forest Improvement Program. Now,
Excuse me just a second, Jen. Could you go back into presentation mode?
sure.
Thanks.
Um,
Easier to see.
oh, there we go. Whoops. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Um, I'm sorry. For forest management plans, there is not a ranking criteria that we look at for those applications. We're really just making sure that the project is complete, or the project application is complete. You've submitted all the required materials, and but nearly everybody who applies does get awarded. That doesn't mean necessarily that will be the case in the distant future, but I do foresee that that can still be possible in the next round or so. So don't sweat too much about the forest management plan application. But for the implementation application, we do have an updated project ranking criteria, which is included here. Unfortunately, it is not yet on our website, so you have the exclusive sneak peek to it now. Um, Let me get these obstructions out of the way so you can better see. But this is page one of the ranking criteria. And though it is pretty similar to what we had before, we wanted to make sure that it was a bit more equitable, that we were spreading funds out in a way that was more strategic. So the first question we ask here is, are you applying for the regular incentive pro rate, which would be the 60%, or the lower, which would be the 40%? And you are awarded a good chunk of points for that because we're hoping to free up funds to award as many projects as possible. If you can take a little bit more of the cost of the financial burden there on your projects, then we could, award other people who may not have that opportunity to fund forest management. If your area has been substantially damaged by wildfire within the last 36 months, or it addresses an area that has been substantially damaged by insects, disease, or other natural causes, then you are awarded an additional point there. It was a little bit of a struggle and balancing, preventative forest work to reactive and post disaster relief and post disaster restoration. So we tried to have a little middle ground there by just making it 1 point, recognizing that most people in the North Bay have experienced one or all of these things on their forest land. The next criteria there is the size of the project. As I said in the beginning, the project minimum is 1 acre. So if you have 1 to 5 acres, you're only awarded 1 point. And as you can see, it kind of goes up from there. Over 20 acres is 5 points. Um, this really is to incentivize people to work on larger projects and hopefully, if they don't have project area in mind necessarily for their entire property, to collaborate with neighbors. That is something also that I've neglected to kind of touch on. But if possible, we would like to encourage you to work with your neighbors and the people that even if it's not contiguous, that are in your community to ensure kind of a more regional approach and a landscape approach to fuel load reduction and fire and forest health improvement. So that's why we're awarding so many more points for large projects. In addition to the fact that it can lower the cost of treatment. Think about hiring a crew and all the money associated with just mobilizing equipment. Well, if you and your neighbor are working on a project, that could significantly reduce the cost of that equipment as well. So just a little background on there. The next one is the landowner has participated in a planning process with an RPF or NRCS staff member or a technical service provider or a local RCD or clerk staff. So that's a lot to say. We just want to see whether or not you have engaged one of these agencies in some way to work on forest improvements and forest stewardship. So if you have a forest management plan or a non-industrial timber management plan or a mini management plan, you are awarded 5 points, which is pretty significant. If you have had a site visit and or assistance developing treatments through an RCD clerk or the NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, you're awarded 3 points. And really, we just want you to engage with us or the NRCS or any other organizations of conservation organizations to have a sense that you're committed to long-term stewardship, that you have looked for professional advice, and that we know you. We're familiar with you. We're confident that you are applying for the treatments that are most appropriate for your land and that you will continue maintaining those. The next question there is the project located in a low income or disadvantaged community? You get 1 point if you are. Oop. Is this gonna, there we go, sort of. This is page 2 of the ranking criteria. Um, Next one is the landowner primary residence is located on the property. Yes or no? This is because we do want to prioritize landowners who are full-time residents here, recognizing just even for health and human safety that we should be focusing efforts on on properties where there are people living. Um, the next one is the landowner has the financial means to complete the project without financial support. One for yes. You're an individual or entity applying as a member of a socially disadvantaged group. So we've kind of outlined there who we qualify for that. Um, and in a similar vein, the project is located on lands managed by or for the benefit of a tribal organization. You're awarded another point if you do a project in coordination with your neighbor. If you use the same contractor, you're awarded another point. Kind of goes to my point earlier. Um, Was the project identified in a CWPP or other planning document? A CWPP is a community wildfire protection plan. And the purpose of this question is really to see whether or not there is a larger regional context within your property falls. Have treatments and priorities already been identified by somebody that falls on your property? We would like to know that because, like I said earlier, we want this to be funding that supports strategic management. Um, and let's see, the last criteria there is will the project provide additional community benefits such as neighborhood shaded fuel break, improved emergency ingress or egress, that sort of thing. So if you do take on a neighborhood-wide project or you do work with your neighbors, and it ends up providing a larger benefit than just to you, the two owners, two or more owners, then that can award you another point. And the example there, the shaded fuel break is a great example. Um, we've had some applicants look to do that, neighborhood fuel breaks, and you would then use a combination of different treatments that were offered, but that is also a potential project you could put together. And will you let me go to the next slide? All right. Before I take your questions, I'm just going to go over some frequently asked questions because I figure you might you might come at me with some of these. Um, the first question is, does having an EQIP contract disqualify me? And if you're not familiar, EQIP is Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and that is run through the federal agency called the Natural Resource Conservation Service. So does it disqualify you? Absolutely not. We actually would like to see that you have one. So if you do have one and you're applying for implementation, please just send along those EQIP documents to us as well. Pardon me. We just want to be able to verify what those project boundaries look like and how we can best overlap treatments to make it the best kind of utilization of public funds as possible. Next question. Does my project need environmental review permits? It sure does, but you are not responsible for doing that piece of it. The RCDs and clerk will take on that kind of regulatory and compliance side of things. What really happens is we file a notice of exemption through the California Environmental Quality Act, um, in addition to doing some preliminary, wildlife research just on the computer, and searches. We work and we consult with a professional archaeologist who will do some historical and cultural record searches as well. And if needed, we'll actually go out onto site and do some surveys. But you can be rest assured, most of that, lies in our hands, and you don't have to worry about it. Let's see. How long does it take to complete a project? So it totally depends on your contractor's ability or your availability. However, contracts are written for a term of 1 year. So don't bite off more than you can chew or more than you can pay for. Please remind it if you're awarded, you have 1 year. Sometimes things happen. We'll extend that by a month or two, but it's not enough to fit in more treatments than is reasonable. Um, when will I receive payments for completed work? So you can expect to receive reimbursement about 4 weeks, if not maybe 5 or 6, after we have done our verification. So essentially what happens is if you're awarded and you've completed your project, a representative from the RCD or clerk will come out to your site, assess the project areas, take some photos, and determine whether or not the project has been done to specification, and whether or not there were any sort of violations to the forest practice rules or any other California legislation or, water course violations, that sort of thing. Um, and if everything's kosher there, we submit a report, and then your reimbursement should be coming about 4 weeks after that. An interesting potential development is we're hoping to work with an organization that could speed up that reimbursement process and make it as short as a week, but to be determined on whether or not that pans out. But we do recognize that it can be a significant burden on you to wait for reimbursement, especially if your project is large in scope and cost. And before I forget, I don't believe I've mentioned this yet. For implementation, if you've applied to this, you are allowed to hire a contractor, but you are by no means obligated to. If you have the time, the ability, the energy to do the work yourself, you are more than welcome to do it. You'll be reimbursed based solely then on these reimbursement cap rates. Um, so it'll be on a per acre basis for most of this. So, you can't give us an invoice and say, well, I'm charging this much for pile and burning on my property. We're going to reimburse you for what you applied for and what the cost rate share you applied for as well. So now that we've gone through the FAQs, I'll just point out some important resources. Like I said, I'll share out this presentation so you can click directly on it to our website, cap rate sheet, or local RPFs. Our mapping tools too. If, on the application, we ask for something called an APN, an assessor parcels number. If you don't know what that is, well, you can use this nifty little tool here and you search your address and it can help you do that. Um, you can also use these resources too, which more information on zoning and land use, wildfire resilience. If you wanted to get a good idea of where the highest concentration of ladder fuels on my property or where is the highest fuel densities and what types are they, you can look at this mapper here and generate a pretty neat report of several different maps that will determine or kind of inform you as to where the largest wildfire risks are potentially on your property. Um, and then there's CalTopo and the DAC and SDAC finders. So like I said before, if you're unsure if your property falls in one of these zones, just go ahead and click this link and search your property. Um, and reach out to us. Jason Wells is the Forestry Program Director here at the SRCD. Um, I'm the Forestry Project Manager, and if you're in Gold Ridge's district, and if you don't know, that's okay. You can email me and I'll direct you. But you can connect with Adriana Stagnaro or Rose Intaki. And you can also reach out to Patti Aaron, who's on this webinar as well. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Thank you, Jen. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. They'll come to Jen and me. While we're waiting for that, as Jen was saying, the website is being updated and it should be completely live and updated by Thursday, so you can check it out. And if you want us to send you the link to this recording, go ahead and also put your email in the chat. Again, it's just coming to Jen and me. It's not open to everybody, and I'll take that down and send it to you.
Okay, thank you, Patti. Bueller.
I know you did a very thorough job. We aren't getting any questions.
Patti and Genevieve, great job. This is Adriana. I just wanted to say I tried to send a note through the chat and it didn't work for me. I don't know if it's not working for others. Might be
Oh.
disabled.
I just got something from Heidi. Is
Oh,
poison removal a possibility?
okay, great.
Thank you,
Well, thank you,
Adriana.
Adriana. I'm sorry, Patti, would you mind repeating it?
Sure, is poison removal a possibility? Poison oak removal a poison. Is poison oak removal a possibility?
Yes. Under brush management, that is something you can do. And you can use herbicide, you can do pulling. I wouldn't, but you certainly can. We think of poison oak too. Sometimes it can kind of act as an ivy and a ladder fuel, but it tends to occupy disturbed areas, so like forest edges and um, roads and or near roads, places that are just undesirable and where it builds up the fuel load. So yes, poison oak can be addressed through this.
Hey, in case it is a problem for, like Adriana was saying, to put something in, I'm just gonna go ahead and unmute everybody and we might have a free-for-all. We'll see here. So if you have a question, go ahead and just speak up, please.
This is from Heidi, but I can say that for the chat, if you click on new chat, then then it'll be either Patty or Genevieve that you can chat with. So that's how we managed to get through.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'd also like to mention that I am available to support your application development. So if your head is spinning right now and you don't really know what the next step is or how to even approach it, feel free to give me an email. We can find a time to talk or share some information. I have the ability to do some mapping on my computer. So if you don't have that capacity and can't necessarily afford to work with a registered professional forester, I can help do some of those things for you to prepare your application. So don't hesitate to reach out. We have a bit of time before the application even opens. So we've got some wiggle room to figure out what your project could look like.
Did you post your email, Jen?
It is at the end here. There we go. Cool. And I
Thank
don't know-
you.
Oh,
And I'm posting mine in the chat. I'm the community engagement specialist, so I don't have the technical expertise that Jen has, but I can get you to the right people and answer very simple questions. Well,
what do you think, Patty?
let's leave this up for a couple of minutes so you can get our emails if you like.
Certainly.
And if no one has any questions, then we will call it a night. And thank you all so much for attending. This is very exciting, the work that we're going to be able to do.
You would mute it, there would be a little red microphone.